build the bottom box, I used 1/2 inch pre-finished plywood. This was really nice because I didn't have to worry about finishing it when it was done. It was already a clean, finished, smooth, waterproof surface. So I cut down all those pieces to size and got ready to assemble the bottom box. I plan to paint the outside of the box with a rubberized coating, so I needed to sand all the pre-finish off of one side so that I can paint over it later. I'm starting to cut the triangle pieces for the supports for the wings of the box. Because they are going to be hanging off the edge of the truck, they need to be really strong, and I think I definitely overdid it with this one. I used a lot of these triangles to make 2 supports to hold both pieces together. You'll see what I mean later on. To assemble all the pieces, I did use wood glue. I would recommend Type Bond 3 waterproof wood glue. You shouldn't be getting water into the joints, but in case you did, use Type Bond 3. It is waterproof and it won't leak out if the wood was to get wet. Because this is going to be going in the back of my truck and traveling thousands of miles, I wanted to make sure everything was secured. So I used wood glue, brad nails, and screws to lock everything together. This thing shouldn't be coming apart. At least I hope. I used wood glue and brad nails to install the triangle support pieces. That should be enough to hold those in place. I later on went in through screws when mounting it to the box itself, and that'll give it a nice strong hold. After the support pieces were assembled, it was time to work on the rails mounted onto each panel. These are to help align the pieces when I go to put them together, as well as provide a bit more meat in the wood to screw into. Because these are only 1/2 inch plywood panels, it doesn't give you a whole lot of room with screws. The rails are made up of 1x2 pine boards that I cut down from 2x4s myself, so they're technically 3/4 inch by 1.5 inch. That gives me just enough room to be able to fit my 1.25 inch screws that I was using. They are 1.25 inch exterior deck screws with the star head to give me a bit more leverage. I did struggle a little bit in the beginning trying to figure out how I was going to attach all these boards by myself. This is the stool method I tried originally. Yeah, that wasn't going to work. I decided vertically would be much better to install the boards, so I attached the base piece to a mount I have in the ceiling, and then I could work on it upright. Much nicer on my back. I pre-drilled and countersunk all of the screw holes. I did not want to crack the wood when I was screwing in the screws, and I wanted the heads of the screw to sit flush so that when I painted it, it would go right over. Installing the back piece, this piece will be touching the back of my truck bed, so this was one of the main supports for all the walls, really bringing it that box structure and holding everything together. Now that the bottom box is coming together, it's time to put in the access holes for the back of the truck bed. So this will provide access to the anchor points that I have in the back. The camper will be secured in 4 anchor points on all 4 corners so that it won't be flopping out of the bed, as well as there is a bit of outdoor storage in the bed that you can't get to when the camper is in there because the wings hang over. So these 10-inch squares will provide access to that portion of the bed. They will be on hinges in the back so that I can still access it from the inside of the camper. I use my circular saw to plunge cut most of the cut of these squares, and then I followed up with my flush cut saw to clean up the corners because I did want to reuse this piece as the door to cover this area back up. Making sure to sand all of the exterior facing sides of the pieces along the way so that I can later paint them down the road. Now for the most anticipated part of the build, at least for me. I was nervous about attaching the wings of the camper bed because for some reason I just didn't think it was going to be secure enough. So what I did here was add a 1x4 board, again to give the 1/2 inch plywood a bit more meat when screwing into, because I wanted the screws to be able to hold and have enough strength. This piece is going to be hanging over the edge of the truck bed as well as holding us up sleeping at night. So it had to be strong because I'm not a little guy. I used 1 5/8 inch construction screws to go through the support piece and into the floating piece of the camper. I did mount the support a 1/2 inch down to give myself a lip so that the edge can slip right over the top of the side of the bed box. This made the install a bit easier and really provided additional support for that wing. Like I said, I was concerned about it, but once everything was installed, it was secure. We could sit on it right away, and once the sidewalls go up, it was rock solid. Of course, at this point, I did have to check to make sure that it would fit in the back of my truck, just in case. I didn't want to continue any farther, but it did fit, and it was just short of the truck bed closing, so of course, my measurements were right, thankfully. At this point, it was time to finish installing all of the trim pieces that I would need later on so that I could paint the bed box and start working on the rest of the build. Right here, I am installing a support stud that will later on hold the door frame, so I want to make sure this was in very secure and not going anywhere. So I installed a 3.5 inch screw through the bottom just to make sure. And to waterproof the bottom, I am going to be using Flex Seal. I'm sure you've all seen the infomercials, but they do have a roll-on application here, which I use for the bottom and all the flat surfaces. And then I followed that up with a can of Flex Seal, like spray paint, and covered the triangle support pieces with that, just so I didn't have to go in with a brush and cover all that. It was real easy just to spray it on. Well, this has been part 1 of the truck bed camper build. I will be coming out with part 2 following this, and that will cover the rest of the build. And after that, we will have part 3. I'm going to do a full tour of the camper and show you where it's at now. So I hope you enjoy. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.